The FBI raids a horse racing event this last Sunday, and ICE at it arrests illegal immigrants. Also this week, the second wave of the No Kings protests happened across Idaho. A new report finds that most Idaho schools are ignoring a state law, and Ada County courts rule against Idaho Family Policy Center. That and so much more. This is the Yokel Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you an overview of the news you need to know in Idaho for the last week. Plus, did you know that the American national motto still is, "In God We Trust"? If not, stay with us till the end to find out how you can help it be in more or almost all Idaho schools. Also, we'll have more information on the Qatari jets that has come out since our last episode, so stick with us. Also, to get full coverage on these important stories that we're about to talk about and much more, you can go to our website. And to ensure you're the most informed Idahoan in the room, hit the subscribe button so you can stay connected with us. Let's jump into the episode. On this last Sunday, about 200 federal and local officers raided La Catra del Arande Arena in Wilder. And if I pronounce that badly, I am sorry. I am more American than I am Mexican, if you couldn't tell by my complexion. Anyway, they raided it to shut down what they say was an illegal gambling operation. The FBI arrested 4 people, including the property owner, who ran horse races but never got a betting license, the key reason for the raid. Agents said that he and his associates made pool bets through Facebook and deposited around $100,000 into arena accounts over 2 years. Now, here's where things get a little bit more interesting and probably the main crux of the story. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, showed up and detained several people beyond the 4 charged with gambling crimes. The FBI says illegal gambling creates more violent crime and also drugs in our towns. When law enforcement enforces the law, they must balance justice with compassion. This situation reminds us that upholding order is crucial because the rot starts in the little things. And speaking about ICE, our state has removed more than 50 convicted criminals who were here illegally. Governor Little launched Operation No Return back in August, if you may remember our reporting on it, and officials say it has already transferred 53 people to ICE custody after they finished serving their sentences. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just send them before they finish them so we don't have to spend the money? I don't know. I digress. The program works through a partnership between Idaho State Police and ICE under what's called a 287G agreement. Instead of releasing these offenders back into our state after they complete their jail time, state troopers transport them directly to ICE detention facilities. Officials say the crimes that they have committed range from DUIs and drug possession to kidnapping and sexual assault. The people transferred came from countries including Mexico, Pakistan, another one I don't quite know how to pronounce, and several Central American nations. The governor's office has set up, however, an online dashboard so Idahoans can see who has been removed and what crimes they have committed. The program, for context though, costs about $300,000 from the governor's emergency fund. Governor Little said the initiative works hand in hand with the Trump administration's efforts to enforce immigration law and protect our towns. Hey, 1 second. If you've made it to this point, I assume you don't want to miss out learning more about Idaho? If so, make sure to subscribe or follow us so you don't miss any of our future content. Last Saturday, thousands across our state joined what organizers call the No Kings 2.0 protests. Around 1,200 people gathered in Idaho Falls. Hundreds turned out in Twin Falls, Boise, Pocatello, Rexburg, Briggs, Salmon, and Arco. Former Idaho Attorney General Jim Jones spoke in Twin Falls, and retired Army Sergeant Jolene Crystal addressed crowds about constitutional concerns. Protesters carried signs reading "Not Today, Fascist" and "Orange Lives Matter," claiming President Trump acts like a king rather than an elected official. They voiced concerns about ICE enforcement, deportations, and federal policies. Yet, with all of that said, Trump did win according to our constitutional election system, the very framework our founders designed to prevent a monarchy. Not only that, but he also won the popular vote, which is something that no Republican has done for a long time, so it wasn't just the Electoral College, it was hook, line, and sinker. That's a different bit. The irony does run deep, though. These protesters defend democracy, which we're not a democracy, we're a republic. I don't know, this whole thing, I'm sidetracking. While also rejecting democratic results, championing constitutional rights, while opposing lawful immigration enforcement that Congress authorized, a very congressional thing to do. Anywho, in conclusion, Roman teaches us that governing authorities exist by God's design to uphold justice. When we reject legitimate authority simply because we dislike the outcome, and those outcomes aren't against God's law, obviously, if you have a tyrannical leader that is not following God's law, then there needs to be some adjustment. We undermine the very standard we claim to protect. True constitutional government sometimes means accepting electoral results we oppose. And speaking of the electoral system or representation / republic working correctly and it being slightly undermined, a new report from the Idaho Family Policy Center reveals that over 60 of our public schools refuse to comply with state law. House Bill 352, signed by Governor Little in March, requires schools to ban classroom instruction on gender ideology that is not age appropriate. Schools had until July to adopt these policies. However, the Idaho Family Policy Center filed public record requests with every district and found that 66 out of the 107 school districts failed to comply. 45 districts confirmed they had no policies at all. Only 4 districts fully prohibit this instruction. The law, for context, follows President Trump's executive order to end what he calls, quote, radical indoctrination in K-12 schooling, end quote. Senator Cindy Carlson, who co-sponsored the bill we talked about earlier, stated that conversations on these topics belong at home, not in the classroom. The Idaho Family Policy Center plans to push new legislation that would allow the Attorney General and Superintendent to enforce the law and withhold state funding from districts that don't comply, actually giving it some teeth. Sometimes the laws get passed and then they don't have teeth, which is weird, but it's easier to get across the line. Looks like they're going to try to apply teeth now. That all said, parents deserve to know if their children's schooling puts ideology above state law, parental rights, and true education. If you didn't know about that story or liked learning about all these things so far, do us a favor and hit the like button and subscribe / follow button so you can stay connected with us and reach more folks who love Idaho just like yourself. And speaking about records coming out, and this one a tad bit concerning for our representatives, records confirm what some have suspected, that Governor Little and Senator Risch learned about the Qatar training facility at Mountain Home Air Force Base the same time we did. Text messages between their chiefs of staff show both offices were caught completely off guard by Defense Secretary Hegseth's October 10th announcement. Even brass at Mountain Home Air Force Base didn't know. This raises an important question. How does a deal years in the making surprise our state leaders and local military officials? For context, if you didn't catch last week's episode, the agreement brings 12 Qatari F-15 jets and roughly 300 personnel to Mountain Home by 2030. While proponents compare this to Singapore's existing training program at the base, the secrecy troubles many. Governor Little later confirmed that Qatar won't build a standalone military base, but the lack of communication is definitely not reassuring. When federal officials bypass state leaders on major decisions affecting our state, it does erode our trust, especially when they're our representatives. They're supposed to represent us and be involved in that because we have all this work we've got to do. This should have happened before the announcement, not after, because, like I said, there are representatives. And speaking of Idaho Family Policy Center and the court system, which we would not be able to get through an episode without it, an Ada County judge ruled late last week that Idaho Family Policy Center, Blaine Gonzatti, and Pastor Josh Bales of the Well Church made false statements about a drag performer at a 2002 Coeur d'Alene Pride event. Judge Patrick Miller found that the claims about genital exposure were not supported by the evidence, though the court did not rule on whether a testicle appeared briefly during the performance, which, for those of you that listen with the family, we have done a job to make sure the episode is in our standard, available for all the family to listen to. But if you have a different standard, you may want to skip. Use your discretion there. Want to let you know. Anyway, continuing on. With the court ruling against several specific statements, which included Gonzati's use of the word genitalia, and Bale's claims that, quote, genitals came out of his underwear, end quote. However, the judge denied summary judgment on the defamation per se claim, sending that question to a jury trial scheduled for April. The IFPC board, in conclusion, stands behind Gonzati and Bales, stating they believe both men will be vindicated. Board Chairman Israel Waitman emphasized that this fight is about protecting children from indecent sexual exhibition across our state. The organization continues to champion biblical values in public life, maintaining that truth will not be silenced despite this legal challenge. Which, did you know about that story? Did you know about the Qatari jets? Or what has been going on with ICE and immigration enforcement in the state of Idaho? If not, and you found this episode helpful, please don't hesitate to share it, especially with your friends and family, so they can be more informed, just like yourself, about what's going on in the state of Idaho. And speaking of another topic we've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 weeks, the hunt for Boise State University's next president just got longer, and I mean much longer. The state board confirmed last week they wouldn't rush to fill this position, and the search could stretch, from the reports we're seeing, through the entire school year. As for what has happened on this, after 7 months, the search committee told the board they couldn't find 5 strong finalists to recommend. Some candidates withdrew when they learned Idaho law requires the board to publicly name all finalists. Sitting presidents and senior leaders at other schools don't want, and this is why, or I guess a reason why, they don't want their current employers to know they are job hunting. But, and there's a big but there, there's a little bit more probably to this story that's not being talked about in the main news networks. Idahoans have been pushing rather hard for a president who actually represents our values, not another progressive administrator that has a bunch of fights with the Idaho legislature and loves to push DEI policy. This pressure matters, and the board seems to be recognizing it, or other factors, but it's all seeming to come together for that effect. Board member David Turnbull, who leads the search, says the extended timeline actually helps, since most candidates don't want to relocate mid-school year anyway. Meanwhile, interim President Jeremiah Shine will likely stay in his role through the legislative session and possibly the rest of the year. Board President Kirk Liebeck put it simply, quote, "We owe it to our students, our faculty, and the people of Idaho to get it right," end quote. And coming to the end of the episode, so sad, but it's our last story and that's our fun one. A Canyon County couple saw an opportunity and took it. Joe B. and Daniel Arnold read House Bill 202 back in 2023 and decided to donate In God We Trust signs to the local schools. As if you're wondering, why would the bill cause that? The law requires schools to display our national motto if someone donates the materials, because of the kind of weird separation of church and state and being like, well, it has God in it, but we're supposed to be separating. America's civil legal system is going through some growing pains. We'll just say that. Anywho, last week, Caldwell School District trustees voted unanimously to accept 9 signs, 1 for each school in the district. The 2-foot by 2-foot signs show In God We Trust with an American flag waving in front of a sunset. Joby Arnold told Idaho Education News that faith has been, quote, removed from our daily lives, end quote. She wanted to remind students that God stays with them, even at school. House Bill 202 passed in 2023, and Representative Bruce Skog and Jeff Cornelius sponsored it. Governor Brad Little signed it into law in March of 2023. The Arnolds plan to donate similar signs to the Nampa School District as well, so they can enjoy the love over here in Canyon County. Students now have a daily reminder that we are a free people because of the faith that our nation was built on and animates our culture, which is a Christian one. On that wonderful note, thank you for listening to the entire report. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you liked the Midweek Report, make sure to check out our other content on our website. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to us via email or on Twitter by tweeting us at @LocalYokelIdaho. With the small team we have, we're not always able to hit everything we want to, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now. I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.